I'll just quickly introduce myself before we begin. My name is Rabab Zaidi. I'm a first-year radiology resident over at Northwestern in Chicago. I just want to thank our panelists here today and everyone who's participating in our breakout session today, focusing on work-life balance in radiology. Just some quick housekeeping things before we begin. I'll just ask everyone to direct their questions to the meeting chat, and then I'll read the questions from there. Any questions that aren't able to be answered today, we will share them on the website. I'd like to introduce all of our panelists today. First, we have Dr. Susan Hobbs. Dr. Hobbs is a diagnostic radiologist with a subspecialty in cardiothoracic radiology. She is the Vice Chair, Education and Program Director of the Diagnostic Radiology Residency Program at the University of Rochester Medical Center. She's also the Associate Program Director for the Integrated Interventional Radiology Program. Next, we have Dr. Morley Lynn Wang. Dr. Wang is board certified in family medicine and radiology. She is currently the program director for diagnostic radiology at the Cook County Hospital, which is located in Chicago. Her interests include wellness and running. She ran a 100-mile ultra marathon in April of this year in Palm Springs. She also has 2 kids, both adopted from China, 18 and 12 years old. Her husband is a state trooper for Illinois. And last but not least, we have Dr. Graham Keir. Dr. Keir is a chief resident in diagnostic radiology over at the Zucker School of Medicine. He is the recent president of the New York State Radiological Society Residents and Fellows section. Dr. Keir will be pursuing a neuroradiology fellowship over at Weill Cornell next year. His wife, Victoria, is a resident in oral and maxillofacial surgery, and they have a 15-month-old son named Ethan. So very impressive panelists that we have here. Before I just open up to questions, I just kind of wanted to ask the panelists if they had anything that they wanted to share before we begin, particularly about what work-life balance means to each of them. Anybody can start?
I don't know. I think our ultra marathoner should start. I don't know how you trained, had children, and had your job. I'd like to hear about that.
Let's see. Work-life balance. You prioritize yourself number one, always, before everyone else. That is probably the key to life. That does not mean that you're selfish. It does not, actually, it means that you're not selfish, because you can't help anyone else unless you help yourself first. You cannot have, and the energy that you give to other people when you are depleted, that's not sustainable energy for anyone. When you give to other people, it has to come from a place of inner satisfaction. Can you tell? I've been in a wellness conference like this whole weekend, so I'm talking like this. But yeah, so that's my 2 cents.
I can go. So one of the things I've sort of learned is that life is going to come at you, and it's going to be unexpected, and there are going to be opportunities and challenges, and you're not, it's sort of the same. You have to know what your purpose is and why you do your why. And I think when you feel like you're overscheduled or overwhelmed, that's when you have to take some time and sit there and reflect on what you've started and what you might want to not do anymore, because maybe it doesn't align with your current work-life integration or balance. And that's a hard decision to actually say no, or to change course. But I think it is something that we need to do continually and really intentionally, I guess I would say. And I haven't been at a wellness conference yet.
Yeah, I guess when I think about wellness and work-life balance, one idea that's kind of stuck with me is something that my wife introduced me to from the book, The One Thing. And that's the idea of thinking about it in terms of counterbalance. because there are going to be times when you really have to focus on one thing, especially if you're pursuing medicine and you want to be successful at it. You have to pursue one thing and only focus on it for periods of time. But then you need to, go back to those other activities, like spending time with your family. I have a 15-month-old son, and giving them all of your attention. So it's, going back and forth and kind of counterbalancing from, giving everything your all and then giving something else your all, and, refilling your kind of wellness bucket. And I think, it's impossible to do everything at all the same time. I just recently took my boards, and, I had to take several months where I was just focused on studying the boards, and, my wife had to kind of pick up the slack. But there are other times when she's, on like some impossible service where her hours are terrible and I need to pick up the slack. So that's kind of the way that I conceptualize work-life balance.
I think those are all really great experiences that all of you have shared. We do have a few questions that are in the chat. The first is from Melanie, and she asks, how do you juggle kids and work? Did you go part-time at any point? This is for anyone.
So I had, my first pregnancy was while I was a fellow. And I think it's important when you, as all of you kind of know, have a child or a life-changing event in residency or in training, that you communicate with your program director or whoever you need to communicate with. So I was very lucky that they allowed me time away. And then I did actually, my goal was to be an academic radiologist. I didn't do that initially. I took a private practice job where I could work part-time because I had preemie twins, and that's what I needed to do at that time in my life. And then obviously I transitioned. Now I'm in an academic, back in academics. So I think radiology is great for that because there is a lot of mobility and flexibility in what we can do. And so, yeah, that's how I managed that. We did have a nanny for a while too. So,
when I started residency, I started radiology residency when I was 40 years old. I was family medicine first. So when I was 40 and I started residency, I had a 6-year-old kid and no other kid. I adopted my second one. I just remember I was taking physics whenever that was. I can't remember what year that was, but I remember the physics exam and the picking up of that second kid coincided. So it is possible. Basically, my husband raised my second child. This kid probably didn't know how to say mommy, knew how to say cat before mommy. And I think at that time, I thought it was a terrible thing, but really your job as a parent is not to fix all your children's problems. They are going to have problems, and you're going to have to let them have problems and struggle through those problems and feel all the negative emotions from having those problems. And now that my second one is 12, my oldest is 18, I see the fruits of me not being there. She is very independent. She has a wonderful relationship with my husband that she probably could not have had if I was there changing her diapers and doing all those things. So your job as a parent basically is just to love your children just as they are. And they know that. And they will have their own journeys. You will not get that time back. I thought after residency, fellowship, and I go part-time, I'm going to repair what happened. No, it happened, and that's how it is. And that's okay. And I see my husband can yell at my child 1,000 times more than I could, because he has that relationship, and she listens to him. And that was because of that time. And you may not see the fruits of that until later. Nanny, cleaning lady, I hired people. I barely knew them. and I forced myself to trust strangers to take care of my most precious things in my life.
That was really inspiring to hear, because I'm at the beginning of all this. So to hear that it worked out and everything is really good. So yeah, we have a nanny, and I don't know how we would survive if we didn't, because all of our parents are not in the state of New York where we're in residency. So there's no one that can help us out in a pinch. So we really have to plan ahead. So I have to know my wife's call schedule. She has to know mine. She has to know when I'm on night float and, when I'm on an afternoon rotation. And we just, sometimes one person picks up the slack more and sometimes another picks up the slack more. It's definitely very hard. I still think that, having children in residency is a good time to do it. I think it's possible. Everybody says there's no good time to have children, but, in residency, you have the benefit that a lot of times they'll give you time off, and it's not like you're not earning an attending salary during that time. A lot of residencies are required to give you time off to some extent once you've had a child. So I think, for those of you who are considering it, I think it's doable. Both my wife and I are residents, so it's not like one person has a more kind of normal work hours job. And if we've been able to make it work, then I think it's possible. I think, radiology is great that it's a little bit more predictable. So it's a little easier than someone in, say, like a surgical residency, but it's still very hard. And we're doing the best we can, and we're definitely happy that we had kids. We had a kid now. Looking back on it, we don't regret it at all. We're thrilled. And yeah, we're making it work.
I'd like to springboard off of what you said, the scheduling. So now my children are older, obviously. So we have 3. And my husband works, I work, and we because 3 weren't enough, we got a puppy. So you should see our Google Calendar it is so crazy. But I think scheduling and planning is really important when you have multiple interests, whether they be children or family members you have to take care of, or your interests, scheduling to make sure that you have that time to do what you need to do. Initially I was like, no, I can't go play tennis. No, I can't do this because I should be there for my child. But if you schedule it in, and you have a family unit and you have support, it is important to have support too, not only from your family, but from your neighbors and from your colleagues. You can maintain your interests. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. You may have to drop some of them and bring them back, as Graham said, but I was able to continue doing things that really, really the important part of what made me me during the whole process of finishing residency and fellowship and starting a new job and then moving across the country, having another pregnancy, continuing with my job, getting promoted, all that. So it is important for that scheduling piece.
Thank you all for sharing. I think all 3 of you offered unique perspectives, but it's just nice to hear as a first-year resident as well, to know that it's possible to balance, work and just life in general, whatever it throws at you. And in the chat, a lot of the attendees are also just expressing their appreciation for all of your perspectives. We did have a specific question for Dr. Lynn. This is from Andrea, and she asks, what made you change from family medicine to radiology?
Well, I got the National Health Service Corps, and there are only like 5 things that you could go into, and radiology was not one of them. Anyway, I hated radiology in wellness 4th year because you're sitting behind someone. It's a dark room. You don't know what you're doing. You're not talking to anyone, and it looked horrible, basically. Then, so I didn't even think about it. It wasn't like I went into family medicine. I loved every rotation pretty much. And so I said, well, I'm going to do family medicine. And I was fine doing family. I was like cruising along. I was fine. I did family medicine for, I think, 15 years. So what, well, yeah, because I was 40 when I started radiology. Then they wanted to like shut down part of Cook County Hospital. I was working there already. And I started thinking, is there something else I want to do? Like if I didn't have this job, what is there something? And radiology came up. It was more of an intuition as opposed to something based on knowledge, because I was already, in quotes, too old. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. If I'm going to do something, it's like, it was like an inner drive. It wasn't like I explored it. And I didn't know if it was the right thing to do, but I did it and I love it. I love radiology. I love both, but radiology is a better fit for me.
Thank you for sharing that. I think we have about 2 minutes left in the session. And I think one thing I'd like to ask, if all of you can share, is if you have one piece of advice for all of the students or anyone else who is in this breakout session right now about what was most important to you or most meaningful to you as far as achieving that work-life balance as best as you could.
I would say that you know the answer to every question that you have. The answer is not outside of yourself. You actually know someone else's answer is not necessarily your answer. You have to trust yourself to go with some gut feeling that you know the answer.
Right. Your situation is unique to you, and you're the best person to judge how to manage your entire life. I mean, that what looks good to me is probably not what looks good to my colleague.
I think one piece of advice I would give people, it sounds maybe a little silly, but just keep a to-do list or something on your phone, because that way you can, if you have to do something, first of all, you're not going to forget it, but also you can write it down and know that it's taken care of, and then you're not obsessing about it later. So I keep something like, what do I have to do today? What do I have to do this week? What do I have to do this month? And I know once I've put it down, then I can put it away and go enjoy or focus on whatever I'm doing at the moment.
Yeah, having an older child and having them involved in sporting events and other things that they're doing, it is that what you just said is so important, because the last thing I want to do is be thinking about work while they're doing their thing and they're succeeding in their thing and they're engaged and excited about whatever it is they're doing. You want to be fully present in that moment for them, if you are able to be there.
I think that's great advice. I mean, all three of your experiences were really impactful to hear for myself, and I'm sure all of the individuals who are attending the breakout session probably feel the same way. With that, we're going to wrap up. Thank you to our panelists for answering our questions and sharing their experiences and perspectives. I hope that this was impactful for everyone who attended today. The next session, so you will just have to log in via the Zoom link for the next session. And if there's any other questions, you can post them in the chat and I will be sure to send them to our panelists, and then we can post them to our website. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.